Are you expecting any problems with that rollout?
Well, I hope not. I think most Australians would be saying, at last it's here. Now tell me, when can I get the jab in my arm? I'm hoping that this rolls out as quickly and as safely as possible. We know roughly there's different groups that will get the vaccine at different time. But I think Australians are right to ask, when do I get it? If you've got a mum or dad in aged care, you'd want them to get it as soon as possible, and you'd want to know when you can get it. In a community like mine in Western Sydney, where people speak a lot of different languages, it's really important that we also get that message out that this is safe, and when and how you can get the vaccine, so we get as many people to get it as possible.
So what are the questions that your office is getting, Jason, since that announcement came yesterday? The Eagle has landed from the Health Minister, Greg Hunt. What is there any confusion out there about where people can go and when?
Look, there's a bit of an information vacuum, and particularly in different multicultural communities, people are getting rubbish information from Facebook or from WhatsApp or from WeChat. And if you're not getting the right information that this is safe, you're likely to listen to what you read on the internet and spread it to your friends. So it's important that people listen to their doctor, seek their advice, but also that the government gets that information out to all Australians about what's happening, when you can get the vaccine and how important it is, because the more people who take it, the safer everyone in our community will be.
The New South Wales Premier, she believes, she had a press conference, we had a bit of that live on the program a short time ago. She believes that New South Wales should get the lion's share of the vaccine, given that the state is doing the heavy lifting at the moment. I know it's a state government as opposed to federal government at the moment, but is she right, given that New South Wales carries the heavier load? Should New South Wales get more?
Oh, we're all Australians. We want all Australians to get the vaccine. It is right that New South Wales is doing a lot of the work when it comes to quarantine, and a lot of these initial doses will go to quarantine workers. But I wouldn't want to prioritise one Australian who lives on one side of the country from the other. We should be prioritising, and I hope we are, based on the type of frontline work people do and their vulnerability. We need to make sure that we keep those older Australians that we all know and love in aged care safe. That's why I said at the start, I've got family in aged care. I want to know when the needle goes in the arm to protect our older Australians.
Just want to talk about housing at the moment. You would have seen, Jason, on the weekend, and for a few weekends now, pricing is just extraordinary. In Sydney, in your capital cities, Melbourne too, Brisbane to an extent as well, prices going through the roof. How concerned are you, particularly about first home buyers trying to get into the market? And if that's the price, what can even be done about that?
Yeah, well, it's a massive issue. You're right. This is the biggest investment that most of us will ever make. You mentioned Sydney. Think about this. I think the average price of a house now in Sydney is about $1.2 million. So it's a massive investment that people undertake. There are things that the federal government can do. Wages policy determines the amount of money that people have to be able to buy a house. And if prices go up quicker than wages, then it makes it harder and harder. Immigration's part of it as well. We've got a pause on immigration at the moment, and I bet everybody will be hoping that government would be taking this time to develop more land and make sure that there's more supply out there, because immigration will be back and that'll have an impact on demand for housing. And what the federal government does and what state governments do in terms of land supply is critical, and planning. The federal government announced about 4 years ago that they were going to make more Commonwealth land available for housing. Not much has happened on that. The New South Wales government is talking about getting rid of stamp duty. Now, if they do that right, that'll make a big impact. Think about that $1.2 million average house price in Sydney. If you get rid of stamp duty, that'll save the average purchaser more than 50 grand. That's a big amount of money that people don't want to spend when they're spending more than $1 million on a house. So that would make it easier to buy, easier to sell, and particularly for people who are older Aussies and they want to downsize into a smaller place, but don't want to have to pay a massive amount of stamp duty to do it, and so don't do it. That'd help people to downsize too. So the federal government could, if it wanted to, play a role in coordinating that, not just in New South Wales, but in other states around the country.
Yeah.